Morning, everybody. Crappy Mondays. It's getting my caffeine fix for the day. Welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's political correspondent, Aletha Adu. Morning, Aletha.
Morning, Susie. How are you?
Fine, thank you very much. Live from our Westminster office there. Hopefully the broadband will hold up. Now, this is the People's Paper Review, so get into the comments, ask us your questions. The best ones do get answered live on air. Those of you listening later on podcast, I'm afraid you can't do that. You're just going to have to open a window and scream at a passerby. So what have we got today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on an exclusive new poll, which shows that 10% of those asked said they were already choosing between food and warmth. Now, if that figure is true of the entire nation, it means that 5.3 million people are wondering whether they need to go hungry in order to put the heating on. So, Aletha, can you take us through this survey? Is it really as bad as all that?
Yes, well, since Rishi Sunak issued his disastrous spring statement towards the end of last month, I mean, we've heard that Brits are in for the worst fall in living standards in the last 50 years. We're going to see Brits, as many as 1.3 million plunged into absolute poverty. That includes 500,000 children. And now our exclusive survey is revealing that around 5.3 million adults are having to choose between heating and eating. I think it's important for us to remember it's still quite cold outside. It's April, and you might be thinking, well, we're going into summer, so it doesn't really matter. But we heard from gas energy bosses in the Commons last week highlighting the fact that many Brits haven't even seen the increase in their bills just yet. We might be seeing bills skyrocketing, per month by more than £2,000. Not every household has, spare cash, some savings lying around. And it's just awful that this is the United Kingdom, it's 2022, and people are making such harsh decisions at the moment. What is quite striking, Susie, is that a number of papers have been briefed that Boris Johnson has been asking his number 10 officials to come up with, some more plans to tackle this cost of living crisis. But we've been hearing about these warnings since, September last year. We haven't heard anything since Rishi launched that statement. And apparently Rishi's got this master plan to issue some more help to families just before October, when things are going to get even worse. But what are people supposed to be doing in the meantime?
Exactly. And it's not just a case of heating. We need to remember that, people who are using oil and gas, electricity to heat their homes are also using that pretty much to heat their hot water. And that is something you do still need during the summer months. I mean, it's clear from this survey, though, why people are starting to talk about a recession. It shows that there's a third of people buying fewer clothes. There's a third not buying takeaways or not driving as much, and about a quarter not having nights out. That has a knock-on effect, of course, on all the other parts of the economy. And so, get into the questions, everybody. Tell us what you think. Are you having to choose between heating and eating? Do you think it's fine? Have you noticed the cutbacks so far? The top case study on that page is a lady whose heating bill has gone from about 60 quid a month to 150. Now, if you can afford 150, that doesn't matter. But seeing as she was budgeting for 60, it's pretty bad. The bottom case study in there is someone whose energy supply went bust. She got moved to Shell Energy, and suddenly Shell Energy was saying that she needed to pay £900 a month in advance as direct debit. And it was only when the Mirror got involved and spoke to Shell that they said there was a problem with the meter, and her bill came right down, and she found out she was actually 700 quid in credit. So if you've had to switch to an energy supplier and found that they've put your bills up, make sure they check your meter and make sure that it is definitely accurate, because there are some people getting some astonishing bills coming through. Colin says, good morning, Colin. The Tories don't care. Even the Chancellor rubs our noses in it with heating a massive swimming pool. It's his money, yes. Well, it's his wife's money. But in a time of financial crisis for millions, it's grotesque. It is a bit tin-eared. I'll give you that, Colin. But people are going to say, aren't they, Aletha, this is April. The weather's been dry. It's fairly sunny. It's going to get warmer over the summer months. But that energy price gap is expected to rise in October.
Yeah.
War in Ukraine is expected to carry on at least till the end of the year.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson still doesn't have any solutions to the post-Brexit trade problems at the border. All of those things are what's feeding into putting prices up. So is this going to get worse, or are we being just too pessimistic and left-wing conspiracy theorists?
Definitely not left-wing conspiracy theorists, Susie. I think what's quite worrying at the moment in British politics is that we have a prime minister that's too busy trying to save his own skin and avoid all of these investigations happening, instead of actually trying to, in his words, help British people do what he's been elected to do. And that is to not allow 1.3 million people to be plunged into absolute poverty as of 2022. It feels like we're going back into the 1800s. It's awful. Yes, things are set to increase from October this year, when the price cap will increase once more. There's just no plans. There's just no plan. There had been no plan for when bills increased at the start of this month. Council tax increase, not just energy bills, got national insurance that skyrocketed as well. Things are only going to get worse, and it's really quite worrying times, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, Jennifer says there, my council tax was £165 a month. Lucky you, Jennifer. No, mine's more than that. Now it's £395. If we go direct debit, we've had to have it come out of our benefit. It's still a lot. Well, it's more than double what you're paying, almost, Jennifer. And from paying less than what I'm paying, you're now paying more than what I'm paying. And it's coming out of benefits. That means you've really got to cut back hard. And Mike says, I bought a generator. I'm going to fit solar panels and run LED lights. I'd love to fit some solar panels. Do you know what, Aletha? I've got a lovely south-facing roof. It would keep the electricity on, no problem. But I don't have 20 grand. So exactly. I can't do it. Is there anything that the government's doing? Because this is one of the things that Theresa May cut, was that there was subsidies for, if you had solar panels and you created enough electricity that was more for your house, it fed back into the grid and you got paid these feed-in tariffs, which were very generous. And it meant that you got the cost of your solar panels back in maybe 10 years because they're paying you like 40 pence a unit or something. And now it's come down under Theresa May to about 4 pence a unit. So it seems to have stopped people. That subsidy was helping people get solar panels, and now they seem to have stopped that entirely. Now I'm told that Aletha's connection has just dropped, so I've asked her a question. I'm going to have to answer it myself almost, but help me out, everybody. If you're watching this, what do you think about the solar panels and the feed-in tariffs? Do you think there's more the government could be doing? It'd be great if we could all have solar panels, wouldn't it? But I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. Susan says, good morning, Susan. I'm so worried for what the future holds. I'm single, I live on my own, and everything's just going through the roof. It's another problem, of course. People who live single adults like me and Susan, your council tax, you actually pay, you only pay sort of 75% of a bill that people would normally be splitting between two people. So if there's a couple in a house, you pay 100% of the council tax bill. If you're a single person in a house, you pay 75% of the council tax bill. That seems a bit aggressive to me, especially as there's increasing numbers of single people knocking around. Von shares, what would your plan be? That should be interesting. All right, Von. Okay, let's do this. My plan for solving the energy crisis would be, firstly, that the government massively subsidise, in fact, start a campaign so that every roof in the country has a solar panel on it. Every single one. Every housing association roof, every sheltered accommodation housing roof gets paid for by the government, right? And everyone who's in a private home has massively subsidised rates to have solar panels on their roofs. That will bring down a huge amount of energy dependence. It brings down a huge amount of the subsidy that the government has to give to things like biomass power stations and building nuclear power stations. And it also creates a massive number of jobs and therefore millions of pounds in extra tax revenue. That would be my plan, part of my plan. Now, someone called Tormelian, I don't think that's the real name, says, I think instead of solar panels, there should be passive heating and efficiency. I don't know what passive heating is. Do feel like telling us or get in the comments if you want to, Tormelian. I think you probably mean having houses that don't leak heat in quite the same way. Yes, it'd be great to be efficient. Insulate Britain say we need to have more insulation. It's the cheapest and easiest thing to do. And not enough homes are properly insulated. That would bring down a lot of bills. Maybe that's something Rishi Sunak will be thinking about later on. She's back. Hooray. I can stop riffing. Liz says, I'm disabled and I live on my own. I'm very worried. Of course you are, Liz, because as far as the government's concerned, you don't exist. So I'd be worried as well in your shoes. Now, Aletha, we were just saying, talking about some of the various different options. She's still there. She's gone again. She's gone again. All right, I think this is the Westminster broadband that we have in the Parliamentary Office for the Mirror, and actually it applies throughout Westminster. It's such an old building, and the Wi-Fi is so bad that the connections are appalling. Seeing that's our status, the seat of our government, you'd think things would be a bit better. It's not Aletha's fault, and it's not the Mirror's fault. This one is Parliament's fault, I'm afraid. But maybe there is something that Rishi Sunak will come up with later on this year and sort something out. Joseph Scaramanga Rowntree says, end the bedroom tax. That would be good, wouldn't it? Not to penalise people for having a spare room. And some of the very aggressive policies that came in under austerity in 2010, which haven't gone away, although we have stopped reporting things like the bedroom tax, it is still having an impact on people. Now, keep asking your questions, everybody. Let us know, or let me know until Aletha gets back, what you think is going to happen in the next few months. Are your energy bills going to go up? This survey is showing that people, 90% are already paying an extra amount on there. She's back again.
Hello. Sorry about that.
God's sake, don't do that again. Now, very quickly, we were just talking about sort of energy measures and so on that the government might be introducing, solar panel subsidies, things like this, something to ease the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis. Is anything like that do we face the prospect of any of that coming in the autumn?
I mean, so there were some energy bosses that came to the House of Commons, I think last week, and they were essentially calling on Rishi Sunak to introduce some sort of grant that will allow, households to get a cut in their energy price, their energy bills. It could be skyrocketing to as high as, $2,600 a month as of October, and then allow them to repay it back over a decade, because they were highlighting, the severity of these energy prices as something that they've never seen before in their lifetimes, and something that isn't going to be solved within the next few years, which is, astonishing. And all the time, meanwhile, as these energy chiefs were highlighting their sort of strategies for this crisis, we also learned in that same session that the CEO of Bulb, the energy company that's gone into administration, he's enjoying a taxpayer-funded salary of £250,000 to essentially,
more than the Prime Minister for having presided over something that's done even worse than the Prime Minister's government.
Exactly. All apparently to help customers, transfer between different companies and set up their new direct debits and such. But nobody really has a solution to this. We've got a few months yet before things do get worse, but equally, It's just awful, looking back at our exclusive poll and realizing that 40% of the Brits surveyed in that Delta poll have acknowledged that they won't be going on holiday, they won't really be leaving their houses over summer. So essentially just putting themselves in some sort of mini lockdown in order to just pay their bills and have enough money to eat and have some hot water in the house.
Yeah, which is why people are talking about recession, of course. Now, Mike says, has anyone had their £200 loan from Rishi yet? Mine hasn't arrived. And at the end of that story there, Aletha, the Tories are saying, we've put a package of £22 billion in place to ease the crisis. If you've seen so much as a penny of that money, dear viewer, please let us know. Get in the comments, because I haven't spotted it anywhere. I haven't spotted anyone who's had it either. I think it's not really cash in your pocket so much as a rebate off your energy bill, but still, if you've had it marked on your energy bills and you've seen it somewhere, then do let us know. But Labour is saying that now is the time for an emergency budget. We can't wait until October. Come to the dispatch box now, Rishi, and put some measures in place. But let's be fair to Mr. Sunak. His view is that if all this is going to get worse in the autumn, to leave it until the autumn. Because when perhaps prices will have stabilised a bit, things won't be so volatile, it's easier to see what can or should be done. But does that cut, he may or may not be right, Aletha, but is that going to cut any ice, do you think?
It's just not good enough. After his spring statement, he was going on, all of the TV rounds and saying, I can't solve everything. I can't help every household. And is that really the attitude to be taking when we're hearing, again, I repeat this figure that will just never fail to amaze me, that 1.3 million Brits in 2022 are going to soon be plunged into absolute poverty. And our Chancellor, one of the most powerful people in British politics, is simply washing his hands and saying, well, not everyone can be helped. It's
a man who's richer than the Queen. Richer than the Queen.
Richer than the Queen. Yeah, richer than the Queen. Has done so much to hide, stories about his own wealth, which is not a bad thing, and it's not terrible for people to be wealthy. But essentially, we do really need to do more to help people across the country, because we can't be having people highlighting the fact that they might even be eating dog food because they can't afford, food that's just been on the increase since inflation has skyrocketed last month.
I don't know, dog food is pretty expensive. And if you look at the labels, some of it's only 4% meat, and that's stuff off the bottom of the factory floor. So, be careful buying your dog food as well, everybody. Now, thanks for taking part, everyone, so far. There's been comments coming in about people who haven't even had their £150 rebate yet, about disabled people living alone and don't have the savings. They don't have the capacity for cutting their own bills, insulating solar panels, things like that, which we would all love to do if we could, but we can't. So you need to have some government help, and that has been massively cut in the past decade or so, as we were saying when you were out of the room, Aletha. Now, we do have some other stories knocking around. So keep asking us your questions. Let us know how you feel about the cost of living crisis. How is it affecting your outgoings so far? Are you worried it's going to hit worse? Do you think it's all just a flash in the pan and we're worrying about things unnecessarily? Do you think it'll be all right come Christmas? Let us know. But on page 2, there is some hint that all this stuff the government's talking about is not going to cut much ice with his backbenchers. So over the weekend, it was reported that someone who has seen the Sue Gray report, an official, reckons the PM will have no choice but to resign once it's published. Of course, that is assuming he's capable of actually resigning and realising he's done something wrong. Apparently more than 40 letters, it's claimed, of no confidence are in with the 1922 committee, which needs some way towards the 54 they would need to trigger a leadership vote. And at least one MP, we're told, has written a post-dated letter of no confidence for after the local elections, which are in just 10 days' time. Now, there are 4,300 odd council seats up for grabs. And there are fears the Tories are going to lose anywhere between 200 to 800 of them. And that would be extraordinarily bad, Aletha. But can they really expect, with all these national problems going on, can the Tories really hope for anything else? Can they hope to only lose 200 seats? That seems very optimistic to me.
Yeah, I mean, but it's been optimistic, Boris's entire premiership is the fact that he's been able to last so long, particularly, since Christmas, when these stories of Downing Street lockdown party started emerging. But yes, we do have a prime minister that's facing 3 official investigations because he has broken the rules that he set, allegedly. And he has apparently misled Parliament on a number of occasions, according to opposition leaders. And in the latest piece that our colleague Pippa Creer has published, essentially the Sue Gray inquiry is looking pretty damning, and we've got number 10 officials highlighting the fact, even to papers, right-wing papers like The Times, that this inquiry is so damaging, he will have no choice but to resign. So even if he's been, really stubborn and not even trying to think about the prospect of resignation, this inquiry could be pretty bad. He's already received a fine for attending his own 56th birthday party, which was held in the cabinet room. Number 10 officials are already getting fined for attending this Bring Your Own Booze party that took place in May 2020. The Met Police are now saying that they're not going to be releasing any updates on who's getting fines. And obviously, we believe that the Prime Minister may have been at this BYOB party. So it can only get worse. I mean, he was expected to be at least 6 out of 12 lockdown parties, Susie. I mean, we're hearing the likes of...
In total alleged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we've heard from, Tory veterans like Steve Baker coming out and saying, your gig's up, it's just time to go. Whether he's already submitted his own letter of no confidence, we don't know. But the fact that figures like him are coming out and expressing their disgust in Boris Johnson's leadership, it can only sort of signpost where, the public might be feeling and whether they will take Keir Starmer's advice and just send the Tories a message at the local elections and just vote for a different party, even if they did believe that Rishi Sunak apparently is doing the right thing in solving the cost of living crisis. But, Partygate is not really going anywhere anytime soon. With now, because of the Met Police's handling of how they've chosen to release updates, it's only going to be a drip of notifications over the next few months, leading into...
Well, there was not enough evidence for the police to investigate, Aletha, so it's bound to just take an extra year to actually issue fixed penalty notices for things we'd have got fixed penalty notices for in about 5 seconds flat. Now, John says, good morning, John. While I believe Boris Johnson should be held to account for Partygate, is the time right now when we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis and the possibility of a third world war? If you cast your mind back to 1940, John, the war had started a year earlier, 6 months earlier, and we still switched prime ministers. And we were actually at war at that point in time. We're about to endure the Blitz. We're not actually physically at war ourselves at the moment. We haven't declared war on anybody. Boris Johnson is doing quite well with Ukraine. It's got to be said. Even his detractors would say that. But, Ben Wallace as Prime Minister, Tom Tugendhat as Prime Minister. Would any British Prime Minister do any different other than Jeremy Corbyn? Thank goodness it's not him.
And also, Susie, just on that, I mean, what is the government actually doing to solve the cost of living crisis currently? They have no clue. So even if we were to suddenly have a leadership challenge, it could actually be welcome because somebody else might be saving some of their ideas for when the time comes for them to actually rise to the challenge. Who knows?
Now, PJ is cynical and says, is the briefing about the contents of the Sue Gray report a case of expectations management? Who knows? Who knows, PJ? But I very much doubt that Boris's chums have seen the Sue Gray report yet. So possibly not, I would suggest. But there's a knock-on effect for all this national stuff. I mean, the Prime Minister is obviously doing what... sorry, I've forgotten the name of our previous commenter there said, I think it was Mike, but said... should we remove a prime minister when we've got these crises going on? That's exactly the kind of game he's playing, isn't it? By just knocking this can further down the road, hoping that politics and events happen and intercede and he can look good doing something else so that we don't have this discussion anymore. But when they have the local elections and however many councillors the Tories will lose, and they will lose a chunk of them, they have also lost party activists, people who go out on the doorstep. They've lost a lot of grassroots confidence from people who will go, it was Boris Johnson, it was the cost of living, whatever it was, that was the reason we lost our seats. And they won't want to go out for that Tory government, perhaps, at the next general election. So while, you can say, as they will, I'm sure, that a mid-term local election is fairly blah, and they're always bound to lose it. actually what they've lost is the people who fight the general election for them.
Absolutely.
Big difference.
They've been embarrassed to have him on their local election campaigns. I mean, really, the Prime Minister should be everywhere. Somebody like Boris, he's such a character, he'd be keen to just be parroting his lines. And
people keep talking about him being sort of electoral, catnip for people. But he hasn't been out in public, in front of the public, since Partygate broke. I think he's supposed to be going out the campaign trail this week, isn't he? I would love to see how many eggs and milkshakes come his way, or just flat out abuse. We'll have to see. I think he's probably beyond the point of milkshakes. Now, Herbie says, why do people keep saying we need to keep Boris as we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis? The crisis has been created by the Tories. For many folk, there's been a cost of living crisis for over a decade. It's only now the middle class are being hit. You have got it completely on the money, Herbie. That is 100% accurate. Congratulations, well done. You are going to get the final News Agenda mug that I've got sitting in my box downstairs. So slide into my DMs, please. Have a look me up on Facebook, right? Susie Fleet Street Fox Boniface. Give me your address. I'm sending you the final mug because you've managed a better bit of analysis there than either Aletha or I have managed this morning. But it is Monday. Give us a break. Now, keep asking us your questions. What do you think about cost of living crisis, the energy crisis? How are we going to solve all this? How do you think the local elections are going to be looking for Boris? Should we replace him? Should we not replace him? It's all there to be discussed. But first off, there is a bit of good news in the world, and here it is. Now, just about everyone who knows me has had their ear bent at some point about nuclear test veterans. But today, there's some good news, at least for another group of veterans, the men of Bomber Command. Now, despite losing half their number, about 55,000 men, average age 22, during bombing raids in World War II, they've been denied official recognition for decades. They were refused a special medal clasp by a Whitehall committee, which yours truly revealed was corrupted by MOD officials just a few weeks ago. And they only got a memorial, a Hyde Park corner, when the public raised £5.6 million to build the damn thing. But now they are getting a cinema documentary using remastered footage from the inside of the Lancaster bombers to tell their story. Now, Aletha, this is great news for those who survive, because they're going to get their stories and their experiences out into all the hearts and minds of people who have no idea perhaps what the Lancasters achieved during the war. But all these forms of recognition, I suppose, are a little bit late for those who are already gone. Do you think they were being ignored because the government was embarrassed about dropping bombs, or because they were embarrassed about losing half the air crews?
It's quite astonishing that we're having to celebrate these heroes getting a film tribute. It's something that we should be celebrating all the time. I think we should be highlighting much more of their achievements, throughout the year, as we would, with other remarkable things. And, whether they were embarrassed about, the handling of things, it's unknown, but equally, we're just not doing enough to help them. These veterans are struggling, with their own sort of poverty crisis, struggling with housing and such. They really shouldn't have to be shouting around and fundraising for their own, memorials and things. It's ridiculous.
It's Veterans UK, isn't it? Which is the agency that deals with war pensions and veterans issues and stuff, which has had terrible cutbacks and is also doing terribly badly. I heard over the weekend about a widow who's been waiting 5 years just for a hearing about a widow's war pension, which they're now talking about throwing out because it's taken too long. Not her fault. Veterans UK's fault. Disgraceful organisation. Now, Nicholas says, but well done for the Men of Bomber Command. At least you're getting your cinema documentary. That's great news. Now, Nicholas says, I'm a single disabled parent. I had to stop working due to declining health. My mortgage has already increased by £80 a month. My utilities have gone up by £70 a month. That's without the increase in fuel and food. Where do I find all this extra money when I'm already living frugally? There are real fears, aren't there, Aletha, that there's going to be thousands of lives lost to this in the long run. Never mind people who are going to be rendered homeless, people who are going to just not be able to have their homes repossessed and so on. What kind of era are we talking about going back to? You mentioned Victorian times there, but are we talking about, early 80s recession, 90s recession? What kind of scale are we on?
Yeah, I mean, it could be pretty bad, as you say. Many lives could be lost, and mental health is already on the decline because of the COVID lockdowns we had to go through. And now things are going to get even worse. People have been fearing about, living in spiraling debt even before bills increased earlier this month. And, we've got as many as, I think 500,000 Brits worried that they'll be paying at least 40% towards energy bills on top of their own personal debt. It's just remarkable. Where these people are going to get help from, we don't know. And also, we've got a health system that's already struggling with, people's mental health and people's, health in general. Where this is going, it could be pretty bleak, to be honest.
Yeah,
Susie.
we have to wait and see. If you do need help, please reach out to people and tell someone what's going on, and try to get the help. Please don't take it all on yourselves, everybody. Now, Mike says, when the Grey report eventually drops, does anyone expect Johnson to say anything other than, while I fully accept the findings of the report, I still didn't think I was breaking any rules? No, Mike, I think that's exactly what he's going to do. I think he's going to say it was just a party, and Ukraine and Putin and cost of living, something else. He's going to pull a rabbit out of the hat, do something else. But we'll wait and see, won't we? Now, if you want to see the Lancaster bomber documentary, it's called Lancaster, and it is in the cinemas from May 27th. So do try to pop along and see it. If there's anybody out there who wants to make a documentary about nuclear test veterans, get in touch, because they deserve their chance of that as well. If you're listening after on podcast, please leave us a review because it helps other people find us. Thank you, Aletha, for taking part. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Good luck with everything that's going to come down the road at the rest of us, Britain, in the next few weeks and months. But we'll see you again on Wednesday for another edition of the News Agenda. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.